Persistence is defined as the act or fact of continuing to exist longer than usual. Persistence, and no matter what it is you're doing, whether it's in your business, in your personal life, in your relationships, etc., persistence is one of the key things you can do and one of the best qualities you can have to become successful. Oftentimes, your greatest success comes right off the heels of your failure, and it's been shown time and time again. Today's episode of Sundays with Josue is going to be talking about persistence. And for those of you who are new here, this purpose of this show is to serve as motivation, education, and inspiration for the next generation of entrepreneurs. Today, we have a special guest who has been able to show persistence in their life. They took a non-traditional route to obtain their law degree, and they're currently a practicing lawyer. They are also the owner and founder of a mobile battleground event company, K-Force Battleground, and in the process of procuring funding. They also are an active member in the New Standard Group, which is a nonprofit organization based out of Tampa that is designed to empower and educate the next generation of young Black men. And above all, they are an amazing person who is humble and open to sharing their stories to help motivate and help and inspire others. So everyone that's here, please help me welcome McGee.
How's it going?
Brother?
It's going well.
Good.
It's going well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hopping on the show. So, Al, I know you. We had a chance to meet and we've talked, several times. But for those
Absolutely.
who don't, give us a quick 101 about who you are, where you've been, your journey.
It's an extensive journey, but I'll give you the abbreviated version. So I am, my name is Al. My full first name is Algernon. That's with a G, not a J. A lot of people give me the hard G, but that's not how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
I am in Tampa by way of Philadelphia, Baltimore, Charlotte. So I ended up in Tampa in 2018, finished up my law degree here. Like you talked about, that non-traditional route. Well-traveled, well-experienced, a wealth of knowledge of just a little bit about anything. So I'm just a go-to guy if you have a question about life, finances, the legal field, all over the place. I just try to be a resource to as many people as possible along the way. That's really who I am in a nutshell. A jack of all trades and a master of none.
I love that, man. And I think that's something that's so important, right? Is making sure that you're actually able to connect different people and use your experience to give others value. So did you come from humble beginnings? What is it that, because, oftentimes many people who are successful aren't necessarily the most altruistic. So what do you think has made altruism a part of your personality?
I really believe it's the ability to adapt to new surroundings. So like I mentioned before, born in Philadelphia, we moved to Baltimore when I was around 11, 12. So that relocating and being displaced from all of your familiar family, friends, and things like that, you're forced to adapt. So from maybe 12 or 13 on, I'm in a new place and had to go through that transition. And then once again, I made another transition to Charlotte. So just being flexible, being able to be relatable, no matter where you're located, that's always the easiest way to get it done.
Yeah, 110%. I think also too, in my experience, going through different areas and being around different people gives you another deep level of empathy, and allows you to connect more and relate to those individuals.
Absolutely.
So what was so during that time where you're going from place to place, what are some different lessons you picked up through that experience?
The first thing that you realize is that everybody's situation is different. I mean, everybody, think about it. The lingo is different. How people are treated is different. How they were raised is different. So just being able to understand that and not judge and be open-minded to that and go, okay, that's different, but it's not bad. And I think a lot of times we look at differences as a negative thing. I looked at it as an advantage to learn something else and add to my toolbox along my journey.
That really resonates, especially like of the difference of acquiring different skills.
100%.
So on that journey, so you're going around place to place, and then you end up, with your law degree. So what's the journey behind that? Because I know there are a lot of people that are aspiring to become a professional, and they may not know, they may think the journey is supposed to be, I have to go to school, then go to college, and then it's a linear progression, at least when it's described in like textbooks. But what was it like for you?
As I mentioned to you in our previous conversation, mine is more of the EKG. So there's this ripple effect. You go to undergrad, you try to figure your way out through undergrad, you get out of school, and then it's like, okay, now what's next? And the biggest issue for me was I didn't have that role model, that mentor to say, okay, when you get out of school, this is the path. If this was your major, this is the path. I was the first male to go to college in my family, so everyone assumed that
Ah.
I knew what I was doing, and I had
Mhm.
no idea what I was doing, to be honest with you. So I was winging it. That's really what it was. But it's a tough world out there. So once
Mhm.
I entered into the workforce, I didn't know really what to do. So you take a
Mhm.
job here, you take a job there, and then you look up and you start piecing it together. And you're like, okay, I want to make more money. I want to do good work out here in the world. I didn't decide to go to law school till I was 32.
Ah.
So just to put that into perspective, so you figure 21, 21, 22, you graduate undergrad. I didn't make that transition till 10 years later.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
worked in commercial real estate. I sold cars. I played semi-pro basketball. I did a bunch along the way,
Yeah.
but you learn that okay, we've got to do some bigger and better things to get to that next level.
Man, that is so that I don't know. To me, the EKG metaphor to this day is still really resonates with me
Hmm.
so much because that's been my
Hmm.
life. I think that's the entrepreneurial journey. I often describe entrepreneurship as controlled terror.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And the other big thing is I learned so much through my failures.
Mm,
I think we focus on if you look at society today, everything is fast paced. We get a lot of results based on what we're looking at people's results. We're not looking at their path because they don't document it. They don't show it to us.
yeah.
But I can go over some things where I failed miserably. But the lessons that I've learned along the way, especially dealing with people,
Hmm.
will stick with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I love that a lot. So learning from failure is something I want to really discuss and go deep, do a deep dive on. But
Sure.
before that, I think also the vision and the motivation is also important as well. So,
Hmm.
what made you make that decision later on in life to pursue law? Like, what was your impetus and motivation?
Easy answer. So in undergrad, I was a criminal justice major, so that was in my back pocket. So
Hmm.
you figure I go through different ebbs and flows professionally. At one point, I decided because I'm a lover of music. I've played instruments, and just music has always been a part of my life. I decided to myself and my partner decided to open a recording studio, and we had a
Ah.
management company. So I did that for almost 7 years,
Hmm.
but it got to a point where I realized I wanted the success more than my artists wanted success.
Ah.
Once you hit that wall and you're like, okay, I poured so much into others for so long. I said, okay, what's going to make me happy?
Mm.
So I
Hmm.
decided to step away from that. I put the plan into place, and law was always in the back pocket.
Hmm.
And I said, it's time to reach into that back pocket and make that transition.
Yeah, yeah. So for myself, I made a career change, not as late as you, but before. And for
Hmm.
me, even being so early in my career, it was something that was super difficult because I identified a lot with what I was doing at the time. So how
Right.
did you overcome that? How were you able to go into something so much more different, even though it's what you wanted, but I imagine there may have been some difficulty in doing so.
Tons of difficulty. Funding was the difficulty at that point
Mm,
because I'm in the workforce now. So at this point, I have a credit score. I have
yeah.
things that they're going to look at to say whether or not you qualify to get funding for a law degree. And then you're
Hmm.
going in later. So schools aren't looking at you as an asset to their student body. You're more of a liability because you're not young and impressionable. So
Ah.
that process was also very interesting. So yeah, I mean, the whole process of making that transition and why I did it and how I came to that point was you look at what's going to make you happy, also what's going to be an advantage down the road because
Mm,
I never want a job that I can be fired from.
yeah.
And there's certain skills that once you acquire them, no one can take them away from you.
Definitely. So, I can hear from how you're talking and words you're using, just like where your mindset is. It's one of,
Hmm.
self agency and taking action and,
Hmm.
ownership. So, when you were faced with those difficulties, like you mentioned, because of your age, you're now a liability, finding funding was a difficulty. So, what was going through your mind as you became aware of those speed bumps and those roadblocks? Like, what were you thinking as you were facing those obstacles?
There's nothing that's going to stop me from getting to where I want to get to.
Mm,
Had a tough conversation with a lawyer at one of my previous companies when I was doing commercial real estate in DC. I
mm-hmm,
had to sit in on a meeting with some attorneys and I'm trying to, pick their brains and say, hey, I'm considering going to law school in this couple of years. What do you think?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, "You're not going to be able to do that."
Man.
So you dig into my sports background,
Ah.
and the easiest way to motivate me is to tell me I can't do something. So that's when the wheels began to turn, and I said, "Okay, got it, not a
Mhm.
problem." So even when I was faced with some of those difficulties, I just remember those faces. I remember those conversations. I spoke. Some of my closest friends are attorneys as well. Don't do
Mm.
it. It's not a good idea. But it's all relative to your life experience and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah, man. So now I think that that is such a powerful mindset to have, right? When you're
Hmm.
faced with those challenges, more of the I'm going to rise to the occasion. I'm going to see this as a challenge and as a way to
Hmm.
overcome it. So, did you always have that mindset, or is it one that you were intentional in developing?
Well, when I think back, now that you're asking this question, I've always had that mindset. There was a block between the thought process and the actual execution.
Mm,
There are a lot of people, I'm sure you hear them along the way. If you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. I'm one of those people, but I was writing down so much stuff and not doing anything.
ah,
And then that had to change. That was the biggest obstacle for me, was like, okay, you've got a book of goals, a book of different aspirations. We have to do something.
yeah.
And this was that something.
And so, what was the shift that occurred within yourself that allowed you to go from book of goals and plans and dreams to
Hmm.
taking that first step?
Fear of failure.
Ah, man.
I didn't, I wanted to be, what's the best word to describe it? I mean, we all want to be successful, right? We all want to be able to make a difference. And I didn't feel like I was making enough of an impact on the people around me or in the world. I just felt like I was out here existing. And I was like, there's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be a
Mm-hmm.
better way. And I'm looking at, of course, I'm looking at my family, I'm looking at my friends, and I'm like, okay, I can be a resource in a lot bigger way
Mm,
if I go this route.
yeah, yeah. I love that, man. There are so many things that tie into that, right? Like having the vision and having the purpose and the mission of,
Hmm.
being making a bigger impact, having the goals written down succinctly, but also taking action and moving your feet. I think those like that is such a powerful thing. And what you're describing is something that I went through myself. So
Hmm.
for the longest time, I'm a very analytical person, very logical.
Hmm.
So if someone says
Hmm.
you can't do something, I'm saying, okay, well, why is it saying that? Maybe they're right. But it wasn't until I was watching an interview from someone in entrepreneurship that is very successful, and
Hmm.
they had the mindset that you have. When someone told them you cannot do something,
It's
their
over.
immediate it's yeah,
It's over.
their reaction was, okay, I now have to find a way.
It's
And
over.
so I believe that you can actually train that reflex, almost like a boxer. Like when you get, like an athlete when you see a ball coming
Hmm.
to swing. I think that
Hmm.
having that mindset and mentality of when there's a challenge and when someone says you can't do something, let me see if I can find a way to do so, opposed to just acquiescing. So
Absolutely.
I think that's super, super powerful.
It
So,
comes from sports as well. And sorry to
mm,
interject.
no,
That's
of course.
also a part of it. If you didn't compete at any level, I don't know that that's an inherent ability in a lot of individuals. But because
Mm,
I've always competed, I've always wanted to be the best athletically, you just
mm-hmm,
kind of shift that mindset when you're no longer on the playing field to your everyday life. So I want to win at whatever I'm doing. It
mm-hmm.
Washing dishes, washing cars, walking up the aisle in the grocery store. I want to win. So it just doesn't matter. So that still sticks with me to this day. I want to compete at the
Mm-hmm.
highest level possible.
Now, how do you reconcile that and that desire with failure, right? Like, because
Hmm.
by definition, if you want to succeed, you don't want to
Hmm.
fail. So, how do you
Right.
take action despite the fact that, by taking action, you're now making failure a possibility?
Okay. So let's backtrack. If you fail and you gave it 110% and you gave it everything that you had, I mean, sports wise, I've lost big games.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
It
excuse me.
was that was on my side.
Okay.
It wasn't because I didn't give it all my all. It was more or less because the chips just didn't fall my way. But
Mm,
it's okay. But that muscle memory of saying, okay, one foot in front of the other, give it 110%. If we don't win, we don't win. It's all right.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. So, speaking of muscle memory and the things that you learn from taking action,
Mm-hmm.
I'm becoming more of a proponent of learning through failure. You
Sure.
know, almost like when you take a practice exam and maybe you don't score 80, but from every question you got wrong, you can go back and review and learn from them. So what is a time on your journey where you had a failure that you learned from?
Easily. When you look at my first stint in law school, and I don't even think I considered a failure, it was just a gigantic crater in the middle of my life that I couldn't do anything about. So to give the short version of the story, my first law school endeavor was in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I went through 2.5 years of that program, and the school abruptly shut down before the semester between my first and second semester, well, last semester, I'm sorry. So I had to kind of figure out a way to finish the actual journey. And I felt like I failed because I felt like I picked the wrong school. Maybe I was in the wrong place. So I was embracing that as if I made a poor decision. And of course, we talk about the naysayers that were like, see, we told you, you should have went here. Or maybe if your LSAT score would have been higher, or if you wouldn't have taken the financial, the scholarship they offered me. It was a ton of stuff. So I felt like I failed. How do you get over that? Personally, I'm able to compartmentalize a lot of situations. So I said, okay, we're going to put that in a box, but how do we finish the mission? I don't think I missed a beat between the school closing and the next step to find another school. It was immediate. It was like, hey, where do I apply? What do I have to do? Who do I have to reach out to? And the wheels just kept rolling. I had a semester break in between. I had to figure out how to sustain. I went and got my personal trainer's license to sustain in between the two school transfers. And we kept rocking and rolling. Nothing changed.
Yeah, you made it happen.
Had to.
And so that to me is such a powerful thing, because so what were just for the audience, what were some of the things that you were hearing the naysayers say?
Like I mentioned, it was we told you don't go to law school, or you went to a private school instead of a publicly funded institution, which also put me in harm's way. This is God's way of saying it wasn't a good decision. The spirituality play. You're never gonna finish now. You're gonna pile on another $100,000 worth of debt. Everything you can think of, and of course, at my age now, I'm 35 at this time. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm going to have to go to law school again and take on some more debt. So when you're in your 30s, debt is important. So I heard all of it.
Man, and then here you are on the other side being successful. And to me, that is, I think, such a powerful testimony, because I have so many friends with so much potential, like musicians and artists and entrepreneurs who, they're just so afraid to take that first step because they're like, oh, 90% of businesses fail with it. It's like, yeah, but if you never start yours, you have failed.
If you don't go, you don't know. I mean, I tell a ton of people that, and even for you, I know this is your show and you're the interviewer, but even when you're looking at the people you surround yourself with, something that even myself, I had to start doing. If you're not goal oriented or you don't have a plan that you're looking to execute, we probably can't be friends for long.
Yeah,
we can be associates. We can hang out every once in a while, but on my day to day, I don't know about you, but I need to be around people that have a plan or a goal that they're looking to accomplish something. Because if you have a ton of time on your hands, something's not right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, that resonates deeply as well, because I've started realizing that my friends hold me accountable to my own goals, where if maybe I'm going out for drinks on a weekend where they're like, aren't you trying to build a $1 million business? Like, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, you're right. Ah, man. So for me, I find that to be so empowering, versus I've had other friends that just say, just work a 9 to 5 and just do, just take the normal route that everyone else takes. And so you're very right. I think that's another moment too, right? With the EKG, that when you're down, your friends should be trying to help you elevate and get back to your full potential.
They should. And also, the big stigma now, you think post-COVID, you think about how many entrepreneurs were birthed during the COVID phase, but don't be fooled. I think we need people that want to just be 9 to 5ers or just want to be employees. Everyone is not cut out to be an entrepreneur. So I nurture those people, and I pat those people in the back as well that are just like, hey, I like my job. I just want to advance in my career, because that takes a lot of wherewithal as well.
It does. And I think at the end of the day, it goes back to self-awareness, right? And knowing what it is that you want to, do for yourself. And I think there was someone that expressed this concept of playing to win versus playing not to lose. And I think that
Exactly.
that's my kind of like my soapbox like speech is that I think that everyone should, whatever it is you desire to do, you should go for it, you know, full send, so to speak.
That's true. The issue there is some people don't even know where to start. I think I have
Mhm.
more of those conversations than any other conversation. Is okay. I've got this idea. I've got this plan. I don't know what to do.
Mm.
We don't
Mhm.
have. I don't know how you were raised or who you were around on the come up. I know myself. I didn't. I didn't have entrepreneurs or tons of people around to give me the blueprint. My mom was like it. So
Mhm.
whatever she did or the troubles and struggles that she went through, I looked at those and I said, okay, she's getting it done. I want to get it done. But
Mhm.
if I would have had more of a community of entrepreneurs, I think my life would have been a little different.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I think, and to go back to that point, so, you know, because here you are, you're at like the goal, you know what I mean? And of course, you had other aspirations that you have in the
Mm-hmm.
future, but you've hit a
Mm-hmm.
pretty large milestone.
Mm-hmm.
So as you were growing and going through that journey, how did you evolve as a person, and in particular, like in particular in regards to your mindset? So you've always had a competitive nature about you,
Mm-hmm.
but what are some things that you acquired and developed as you're going through this journey?
Once I finished, I feel like I can do anything. I
Mm,
literally think if you give me enough time and there's somewhat of a path and I can kind of piece it together, you give me a few minutes, I feel like at this point I'm invincible as far as my ability to try something, execute. Even if I don't succeed, I did pretty well on the way.
mhm.
This path has kind of shown me that there's no such thing as no, you can't, you won't, it can't get done. There's a way.
Yeah.
There's a way. There's a way.
So when you're going through law school, what was it? What were contemporaries like? Did because I'm sure you know there's attrition. So some people maybe
ton,
not.
a, a ton.
To put it lightly, I'm imagining.
A ton. I started out with not even nine friends. You know how orientation, you kind of look to see who looks like you, acts like you, talks like you. So
Hmm.
there were a few of us. It started out as nine of us. Graduation, there were two of us, and I was one of the two.
Man,
So that's some serious attrition.
that
Serious.
that is. So what would you say were the difference between the nine versus the two?
Life. I mean,
Mm.
it's difficult. I mean, if you think about it, how many people do you know that can just shut their lives down for 3.5 years?
Not many.
You have to shut your brain off from outside noise and say, okay, we're going to focus on this one thing for the next 3 years. And
Mhm.
most of the time, we're not 21, 22. Some people go to law school 25, 26. Even then, you have to
Mhm.
stop what you're doing. That's not normal. It takes a special type of person to do that and
Mhm.
to continuously go through the rigmarole every single day.
Yeah.
It's I still don't know how I got through to some extent.
Mhm.
God was
Mhm.
involved. Definitely was involved, but it's a different process, a different mindset, and you have to be willing to make the sacrifice.
Mhm.
That's the key. What are
Mhm.
you willing to sacrifice in any goal, right? Like
Yeah.
anything you want to do, you have to sacrifice something. What are you willing to give up? I ask people that all the time. I want to do this, I want to do that. Okay, cool. But what are you willing to give up to get there?
Mm. What's some of, what's some words of guidance you would give to somebody that is trying to find, you know, that goal that they're for them to strive for? Let's say, you know, they're working 9 to 5, they're
Mm-hmm.
happy, they're content, but they feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's something missing. What advice would you give to that person?
Look around you. What are the things that continuously come to you? I think a
Mm,
lot of us are seeking out the hustle, seeking out the opportunity. But a lot of the things that you're good at or your callings or things along those lines are right in front of your face. You just have to be willing to accept those things. What are you good at? What do you see? What type of people are around you? And are you able to solve a problem with your idea?
mm-hmm,
If you're
mm-hmm,
not solving a problem, you're just following what everyone else is doing. Chances are, unless you have some groundbreaking idea to make that better, you're just spinning your wheels.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's a good point. So to pivot a little bit, talking about
Sure, sure.
different things. So tell us a little bit about K Force Battlezone.
Awesome. So I'm a large child and I love kids. I love to play. This all came into effect, I want to say, right before COVID became like a really big thing.
Mm,
So a relative of mine was having a birthday party and we were like, hey, what do you want to do for the party? They're like, I want to have a Nerf war. And I'm like, wait, what? Nerf war. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like, whatever the kids want to do, I don't mind. So we're in the store, we're looking at Nerf guns, and I'm like, wow, this is a whole aisle of just Nerf guns. I never even knew it was that many. So
Yeah.
we set it up. It's really makeshift. We got like tables, chairs out in the field running around, but I'm watching adults roll around on the ground and shoot at each other like we're 10 years old and they are having a blast. And I'm like, wait a minute. The way I'm wired, I'm watching and I'm like, this is a business opportunity.
Yeah.
So I started doing my research just to see what it would take to get it off the ground. And I discovered there's a whole universe of Nerf nerds, as I like to call them. And they range from 10 years old to 65 years old. They make guns, they customize guns, they sell guns. It's a different world. So once I started putting on events just to see what it would be like, it took right off. So I think I acquired, maybe this sounds insane, I probably acquired about 300 Nerf guns in the first couple months of rolling along. So, but I stayed booked. I was running up and down the East Coast doing events, but now it's time to scale it because I want to franchise it. So as you mentioned, acquiring funding, because I want to get it from me doing the events and people I know doing the events to having brick and mortar in a couple of different places in Tampa and some of the other cities I'm familiar with, and take it from there.
Yeah, I love that. That's freaking amazing. So to circle back to all the things we talked about, so here we are. It's COVID. It's in the during the times of COVID, and you start this type of business. What did you not have any fears about? Man, what if there's a second or third wave? What if COVID becomes a big thing and then everything shuts back down? I'm investing into this business. Did you have any of those thoughts on this process?
Control the controllables. That's how I looked at it. I didn't think COVID was something that I or anyone else could control. And I said, okay, even if there was some more downtime, I looked at it as an opportunity to strategize because we're going to adapt as humans, right? To whatever the situation may be. Because I was like, hey, if this doesn't work, maybe I could go the VR route. So I had a pivot. If COVID was really going to wipe us out socially, I was going to go the VR route and do it that way. And it's funny that I even talk about it because now there are places that do strictly VR type of, not Nerf war, but all different types of missions and battlegrounds and stuff like that. So they exist. So someone was thinking the same thing I was thinking.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this up on the screen real quick to let people know. Guys in the live stream, if you guys have any type of questions or anything, feel free to go ahead and ask. I really love this software, man. This is cool stuff. But that's freaking amazing, man. I think that point of controlling the controllable and not worrying about everything else, for me, what I'm trying to do, I'm in the process right now of building a investment company through acquisitions. And the people I'm learning from, they keep getting back to just focus on the very next step. Don't worry about how can we IPO, et cetera, et cetera. Just focus on getting your first clients, your first deal done, et cetera.
That's all it is.
What can you control and take that 1 to second step. I love that.
We get so focused on the end game, right? Like, okay, whether it be money or notoriety or fame, whatever it is, we're so focused on that part as opposed to the incremental successes. I'm guilty of that myself. Yeah. Where a lot of people say, hey, you should be stopping to celebrate this. And I'm like, no, I've got to go to the next step. I got to go. But you have to take a second to go, okay, milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3. So that is a learning process for me as well.
Of course. And I think that's one of those things. So we're talking about, where you are, how your success has come, like your strong mentality, your warrior and competitive mentality, so what are some things that you're working on right now within yourself? Like, what are some struggles you're currently having that you're improving upon?
Biggest thing for me is networking. I am a bury myself in the hole, get my shovel out, and I'm just digging and I'm digging. But as I matriculate through life, I'm realizing in order to grow my business, in order to grow as a human, I need people as well. Because I was the type of guy that was like, hey, I'm going to get this done. Me. You still need a solid network of like-minded individuals that are going to hold you accountable, push you, motivate you, so on and so forth. And that's how I became a member of the New Standard Group, because I sought them out for sure. Once I realized the bar stuff was over and I was set with all that stuff, I was like, I have to get to a point where I have to find some contemporaries, because in law school I was the old guy. I was
Mhm.
the old young looking guy. So yeah, so I didn't hang out with a lot of my classmates. I only had maybe a handful that were my age. So now that I'm done and I'm going to be in Tampa for a while, I was like, I've got to find a network, because all my friends are north from here.
Mhm. Mhm. True. Actually, on that note, I talked about the New Standard Group before, but can
Hmm.
you just give a little bit of a, because I talked about it, but can you give a little bit about what it is and what it means from your perspective?
Sure. So a group of gentlemen during COVID got together and were just having Zoom calls. So they were like 6 friends, and they're all over the United States. So they were just having like conversations on Zoom. And then each individual decided that in their own locale, they were going to start a nonprofit. So the New Standard Group, and then it had its own legs. So each leg was Tampa, Detroit,
Hmm.
Memphis, so on and so forth. So the gentleman that started the Tampa chapter, I met up with him, just looking for, like I said, an outlet, or some gentleman that looked like me, talked like me, had some things going on like me. We clicked right away, but the goal is to reach out to the up and coming youth, to kind of give them a different perspective on how life can go if you make a couple of good decisions along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And
And
that's and
that's
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 so
really just
true.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. So we're not looking to be like big brother, big sister, mentor, so on and so forth, but just to put our imprint on their lives, to show them there are men out here that are doing things the right way. I don't know how you were raised. My dad's a great guy, but he wasn't a part of my formative years. I,
Hmm.
I didn't realize till I was in my 30s that I could have used that. Or if
Hmm.
I would have had someone to give me a heads up, or to kind of slap me around a little bit,
Hmm.
some to see something would have been
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. The concept of like, having that model, that role model to
For
kind of like
sure.
pave the way is so important. And I think too, that back to the humility thing, right? I think it takes a level of humility to admit that that is of value.
For sure.
But even from a scientific, like from a psychological perspective, there's a lot of studies that talk about the importance of that. So I agree.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the New Standard Group for sure is one thing that I definitely love, because, like you mentioned, they're trying to be a good beacon, a good example, and that group for me has been an amazing place to network and meet amazing people. Actually, on that note, we do have another question real quick here. So Terrell Reed asked, what are some of your favorite books, for one, and for two, what would you recommend for a young man starting their journey? So we can tackle those one at a time.
So just my one of my favorite books of course is Rich Dad Poor Dad. That kind of changed everything as far as
Ah,
how I view my finances and how I want to live my life and things like that. So if you haven't picked that up, I think everybody should read that book, and it's not age specific. So if you can read, you'll get something out of that book. As far as which journey, I think I would need a little more specifics as far as young men starting their journey. But are we talking career? Are we talking school? Are we talking professional life? What are we looking at?
hmm great. Yeah, that would be good with some other context. So here's another one from Michael Gardesha. We got, who was one of your favorite mentors?
One of my favorite mentors was my personal responsibility professor, who will remain nameless. But when you talk about no holds barred, um, direct, honest, brutally honest, break you down, tell you about yourself, accountability, I
Yeah.
needed that. I definitely needed that. And she played an integral part throughout my law school journey, specifically on me becoming the person that I am at this stage of life,
Hmm.
for sure. And of course, backtracking, my mom. And that might
Hmm.
sound a little cheesy, but to actually watch a person bootstrap it through life, don't complain, make it happen, trials and tribulations, it gets no better than that. So
Mm.
the no quit mentality comes from my mother.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, like you said, just going through it without complaints and still hustling. That definitely, yeah, that
The
definitely.
epitome of a hustler.
Hmm. Heck yeah. So Terrell added some extra context to his previous question. So yeah, so in the context of adulthood, so to bring up the previous question, to bring up the previous question, and what would you recommend for a young man starting their journey in terms of adulthood?
Easy. Try as many things as possible. Do not make any babies too soon. and invest as much money as possible. Not save it. There's a difference. Save some, but invest as much as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very, very simple.
That's fire, especially from a young age, because man, the time works in your favor.
The market is going to be the market. You just have to be in it, and time in it is better than time out of it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. I'm loving that. So, guys in the chat, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and give a quick like. You know what I'm saying? Thanks for everyone being here live, asking some great questions. We're getting close to the end here, but we do have a couple questions that I want to go ahead and touch on real quick.
Sure, sure.
And guys in the chat, feel free to go ahead and throw some in there as well. We're going to go ahead and don't want to deprive you guys of value by any means. But so one of the questions that I'm really big on is like seeing patterns, right? Like being a student of life. So, this is more of a general question, but what are some differences you've noticed in those that have been successful like throughout your life versus those who have not? And that could be in school, business, whatever.
Easy, very easy. Consistency. Very few people can say, okay, I want to achieve this particular goal, and they're willing to focus on that particular goal for a long period of time. Because all of us have our own timelines for success, right? So if you say, hey, I want to be, I don't know, an astronaut, and you start that process and you look up 10 years in and you're not an astronaut, somebody's going to quit.
Yeah.
But the person that says, okay, I'm 10 years in, I've learned a bunch along the way, I'm not quite there, but I'm going to keep going. Those are the people that next phase are the ones that I've noticed that achieve astronomical success, because they are able to just say, I'm going to keep going. You only lose if you quit, is what I tell everyone.
Yeah.
Because you're going to learn something along the way.
Yeah. Man, so here's a bit of a curveball. So how do you differentiate between the keep on going, you're quitting too early versus, hey, maybe you're not going to get to the NBA? Like how do you reconcile that?
Self-awareness. Because they go hand in hand. Because of course, obviously there's you just want to use sports. So there's some natural ability that goes in there. Even myself, I wanted to be in the NBA, but I hit a wall and I said, okay, I'm better than the average player, but I'm not as good as the pros. And I was actually able to play amongst both to see that. So once you actually enter the market and say, okay, where do I match up next to the people that I want to rub elbows with or outshine? You have to have that self-awareness to say, okay, can I get there or do I need to pivot? Because I think that's also a skill. If you can't pivot, you're going to be stuck. So you have to have more than just one great trait to achieve that astronomical success.
That's true. To add my 2 cents, if I may,
sure.
I think that's something else to go along. This is my left brain, scientific background bias.
Give it to me.
But I think also using data, right? So like you mentioned, let's take the example of social media content, because that's one thing that I have got a lot of research into. If you look at any person's YouTube channel, if you go back to the very first video posted, typically it's between 2 to 5 years old. People that are big now. And I think, so many people can start putting out content and they could do it for like a month or two, and they're not viral. They're not on a private jet yet. And they're like, it's not worth that up. And I think that's like such a disconnect from reality, right? Or in music.
That is.
It's like
don't get me started on music. Go ahead.
But oftentimes, people like you mentioned, like, what are you willing to sacrifice? So what is it you're trying to achieve? And one of my friends pointed out that when you say stuff like, I want to be a millionaire, well, you gotta do millionaire work. If you want to be an astronaut, you gotta, these astronauts, it doesn't happen overnight, So I think having that proper frame of reference for how long something will take is also super important.
Well, I think the problem today is that we have so many examples of the short-term success, it almost dilutes the pool, because there's more unsuccessful people than successful people, but the ones that are successful are super highlighted. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You see these people, I can do it. But 98% of the other people failed along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also something that I've been really big on is kind of showing my own journey. So even with this podcast, for example, I'm more introverted, but this is something that I've been working on, trying to put myself out there more often, like going to different things. Like right now, I'm in the process of trying to find the improv class and Toastmasters to just
Okay.
work on,
Awesome.
the gift of
Awesome.
gab,
Awesome.
And I think that that's something that I think more people that are successful need to be transparent about is that, hey, I didn't just get here. It took me a
No.
while to be where I'm at today.
The other tough part is that the people that get the overnight success, their issue is sustainability.
That's very true.
Because if think about it, if you got it what we call out the mud and it took you X amount of years to get there, you've got the chops, you've got the battle scars. You know what the bottom feels like for a stretch of time that you don't want to go back there. Whereas
Yeah.
if you get it quickly, do you really appreciate it?
That's a very good point.
That's the question.
Usually not as much.
No, not at all. And the staying power. I want to be around for a while. So I don't want the overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the work.
Man, that's wow. I love that. That's gonna be a little clip. I don't want my success. Give me the work, and that's a perspective. Like that's the mentality of a winner. You know what I mean? Of just give me the challenge. I want to go ahead and endure through it and learn from it. So I love that. So
Absolutely.
Al. So you're at this place now where you've had a lot of life experiences. You've learned from them. You've grown from your failures. You've put yourself out there. So what's a bit of advice that you would give to your younger version of yourself?
Goes back to what I was saying before, networking. I think about tons of people that I came across that I didn't nurture those relationships. Some of those people are doing extremely well for themselves. Some of those people are not. But those relationships would have been very advantageous along the way. I was so busy competing, and not necessarily with those individuals, but we all compare ourselves to our peers. Instead of wanting to collaborate, I wanted to compete. And it wasn't openly, it wasn't any animosity. It was just like, okay, I see this person over there, that's my peer. I gotta work harder, or I have to do better than them. They didn't know that, but that was how I was wired.
Yeah.
But the friendships and the networking and the collaboration is fractured because I'm so busy trying to outdo as opposed to working with and learning from those individuals.
Nice. That's one I think it's interesting because ironically enough, despite the fact that we have so much knowledge at our fingertips and we're as a world and as a nation, as a species, more interconnected than ever before, I think that oftentimes we don't have as much of a greater depth in our relationships nowadays in 2022. So
that's a fact.
That's a good reminder for everyone listening. So as we go ahead and wrap up, Al, what would be some final words you would give to the audience, both listening live and those listening on the replay?
Very simple. If you have an idea or if you have something you're thinking about, pursue it. Pursue it. There's so many lessons and gems to be learned in the process and in the failure. And if you're chasing money, you're probably never gonna get it. So you want to look for the value in whatever that goal is that you're looking to achieve. Just don't chase the financial gain. That's always going to elude you. So if you have ideas, if you have things you're thinking about, you have curiosities, pursue them. Even if you get to the end result, and you're like, I don't like this. You learned something along the way, built some character. You might have met some awesome people along the way. That's the biggest thing. We don't pursue the ideas we have because we go, oh, well, this isn't going to work, or someone else said no, or I watched this person try it and it didn't go so well for them. It has nothing to do with you. Pursue it as much as possible and as young as possible. I encourage any young person I come across, like, oh, I have an idea. Okay, so what are we doing?
Yeah.
How to help you get there? And they're like, you make it sound so simple, because it is. What are we talking about it for? How can I help? How can I help you? And those are the conversations I have with anyone that has an idea.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, Al, where can people find you? I know you have, your company page. Like, where's the best way for people to connect with you?
Easy. So IG is the easiest way to reach me. It's my full first name. It's Algernon McGee, McGee, Algernon McGee. You can Google it. It'll pop up, but it's just my first and last name, and it's Mr. in front of that.
Perfect. Man, this has been value packed, man. Talking about, I just love the competitive mindset, the energy, man. It gets me pumped up. This is nice, man. Thanks for your time, bro.
Hey, not a problem. Anytime you need me, I'm available. I'll see you at different New Standard Group functions. Glad to have you a part of the fold, and just keep doing the work that you're doing. I mean, where you are in the building phase, a lot of people will look at it and go, oh, well, he only has this many subscribers, or he only has this many views. don't worry about it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep doing the work that you're doing. The people will see it as long as the quality is there and the content is something that people can actually gravitate to and take something away from.
Thanks. I appreciate that, man. And also, thanks everyone for who's out here live, supporting the show. Terrell, see you, man. That was a great question, by the way. And yeah, Al, you dropping gems of advice, man. Appreciate that. So,
no problem.
All right, guys. Well, thanks you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again next Sunday. And then the Sunday after that, we have a special guest, a business consultant that's going to be coming on. It's going to be a fire episode. So once again, Al, thank you so much for your time. For everyone here live and on the replay, we'll see you guys next time and catch you guys out.
Appreciate you for having me.
Of course.